More of Donald Trump's sickening and disgusting dark past continues to surface as Donald Trump's disastrous war against Iran continues to escalate. These things are inextricably intertwined. Trump may call it Operation Epic Fury, but this is Operation Epstein Fury, or the Epstein War. Donald Trump launched this war to distract, in my opinion, from the Epstein files. And I believe personally that Benjamin Netanyahu was very much aware of Donald Trump wanting some sort of distraction from the Epstein files, knew exactly when to give it to Donald Trump in the form of saying, we're going to invade Iran. You want to join us? Because we're going to do it with or without you, in which case Iran may then strike you. So you may as well just go after Iran in the first place, which Donald Trump did. Now, let me give you some data points, and I want to share with you also what Donald Trump's own envoy to Syria and what Donald Trump's ambassador to Turkey, it's the person who holds both of those positions. His name is Tom Barrack. He got a great question from somebody by the name of Jessica Lamossieur, and she asked him about Epstein's connections with Netanyahu, and Tom Barrack said, yeah, I mean, I knew Epstein. We all knew him, and we all thought that he got his wealth and his power from Israel in the 80s, and that Netanyahu was in some capacity either working with or for Israel. That's what we all thought in the business community about Epstein. I want to give you this data point first. Again, this is Tom Barrack. He's Trump's current ambassador to Turkey, mind you, and special envoy to Syria. Watch what he said in this past week. He said this yesterday. Here, play this clip.
Just wanted to ask you about what I read in the Epstein files about your association with him. Why did you introduce him to Peter Thiel and Vitaly Churkin? What were your dealings with Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, I didn't introduce him to those people, but all of us dealt with Jeffrey Epstein in the 80s as a business person. He was bigger than life. It was a 30-year story of this that I think most of us actually thought that he had built his wealth and his prowess over his international relations with Israel. That's always what kind of the background was. I didn't see the rest of it later in 2015.
In the files I read, you're having dealings with him after he became a convicted sex offender. Why?
Dealings meaning he was emailing me, asking me for access to the president or a transaction. I was running a New York Stock Exchange company. He'd try and get a hold of me for relevant information. That was it.
But you met with him, and you met with Vitaly Churkin, you met with Peter Thiel.
Okay, now I think that's an important data point, and we'll get to more of that in just a moment. What unfolded in the past 24 hours, major developments on the Epstein front. Whenever we see these major developments on the Epstein front, we see major developments on the war front, right? Major escalation yesterday on both fronts. Israel and the United States striking the South Pars energy facility in Iran. Iran retaliates, like I said it was going to, by attacking and blowing up a liquefied natural gas facility in Qatar that supplies 20% of the world's LNG, and then Iran struck a Riyadh facility as well. I mean, these are devastating blows to the world's supplies of LNG, fertilizer, helium. It's all being crushed. And I know that people are like, it's not a big deal. We'll deal with it. No, this is catastrophic. And again, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. This is catastrophic stuff right here. So you had that happening. But what happened on the home front with Epstein and Trump's dark past? Here's what we learned. Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney is Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche is now the number 2 at the Department of Justice. He and Pam Bondi and others at the DOJ, like Kash Patel and others, they're involved in the cover-up of the Epstein files, child sex trafficking ring. So here's what we learned yesterday. Great reporting by Jason Leopold over at Bloomberg. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche is blocking the DEA from releasing an unredacted document from the Epstein files about an investigation involving drug trafficking and money laundering, according to a letter Senator Ron Wyden sent to Todd Blanche. The document, a 69-page target profile prepared by the DEA, or prepared for the DEA by the Department of Justice's now defunct Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force was released in January along with millions of pages of other documents from the Epstein files. Although heavily redacted, it showed that the DEA and the task forces known as OCDETF investigated Epstein, 12 other people, and 2 businesses in 2015. Who were those 12 other people? Who were these 2 businesses in 2015? Notably, right, the Department of Justice destroyed the entire Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. Seems like a kind of important thing to have, but we just got rid of that. The Trump regime got rid of that. And now we learn about a 69-page target profile report on this drug trafficking and money laundering ring. I want to point this out, and let me be very clear. I am not saying this is connected. So I just want to be very clear. I'm sharing with you an opinion protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution here, and I'm not suggesting it's connected. However, one of the big issues that we learned about Epstein and Trump is that their falling out was actually over a real estate transaction where Epstein accused Trump of engaging in financial shenanigans, if you will. I'm putting that shenanigans word nicely, regarding a Russian oligarch who bought this property from Donald Trump in West Palm Beach for about $95 million that Donald Trump had acquired. About 4 years earlier, Trump purchased it for $45 million, and Donald Trump bought it at a foreclosure sale. At a foreclosure sale where Epstein was supposed to be the high bidder. Donald Trump and Epstein were close friends at this time. This was like 2004-ish. And then Donald Trump outbid Epstein, got the home for $45 million, paid all cash, which surprised Epstein that Donald Trump had cash for this West Palm Beach property. 4 years later, Trump sells it for more than like double the price to this Russian oligarch. And Epstein thought, was Donald Trump engaging in some red flag conduct there that Epstein himself was separately engaged in. So, and that's, what this Epstein class does. So, what did Donald Trump know about Epstein's money laundering and other and drug trafficking, or did Donald Trump know nothing? But I think this is an important report. You remember another big development yesterday. I'll talk about it in a moment as well. Democratic Congress member Dan Goldman on the House floor revealed what one of these redacted documents said. He produced an unredacted version where Donald Trump's lawyer admitted that Epstein was never kicked out of Mar-a-Lago ever, that Epstein was never a member of Mar-a-Lago. He was a guest. Trump's lawyer in this document that the DOJ tried to cover up said Epstein was never kicked out of Mar-a-Lago. I'll talk about that in a moment as well. Just go back to the 69-page target profile letter that the Trump regime is covering up. Senator Wyden, initially requested the document from the DEA on February 25th after it was first reported by CBS News. In his letter to Todd Blanche, which cited Bloomberg's recent reporting, Wyden said that shortly after I requested an unredacted copy of the OCDETF memorandum, DOJ stepped in to prevent the DEA from complying with my request. According to a confidential tip received by my staff, DEA Administrator Terry Cole was ready to provide an unredacted copy of the memorandum. But you, Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's number 2 at the DOJ and former criminal defense attorney, you stepped in to prevent him from doing so. Your alleged interference in this matter is highly disturbing. This investigation was spun off from the 2011 DEA OCDETF operation called Chain Reaction that targeted drug trafficking rings and individuals associated with organized crime families, according to 5 people familiar with the case. Separately on Monday, Senator Whitehouse, the ranking member of a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee, sent a letter to Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Terry Cole, the DEA administrator, requesting records and details about another OCDETF operation that surfaced in the Epstein files that was also cited in Bloomberg reporting. The operation, known as Trip Knot, was launched by OCDETF and the FBI a few months before Epstein was arrested and charged with sex trafficking. According to the people familiar with the case, it was a money laundering and human drug trafficking investigation tied to Russian organized crime that was linked back to the FBI and DEA probes in 2017 and 2018. Epstein's name surfaced repeatedly in that case as well, the people said. But the Trump regime is covering up a report on Russian money laundering with Epstein's name in it, drug trafficking and other money laundering, Operation Tripknot and this other operation, Chain Reaction. Bad stuff with Epstein all over him, and the Trump regime doesn't want that released. That makes me absolutely, absolutely sick right there. So you had that going on. Then separately on the House floor yesterday, you had Dan Goldman, the Democratic Congress member, who was a former federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. Here's what went down. DOJ redactions had key details about Trump's Epstein ties, and Representative Dan Goldman just revealed what they were trying to cover up. In an unredacted document shown today by Goldman, we can now read the full notes from the 2009 conversation involving Jeffrey Epstein's attorney and Trump's attorney. Here's what stands out. So look at it. Email dated October 14th, 2009. This entire thing was redacted. Now it's unredacted by Dan Goldman, who was able to get his hands on it. Alan Garten, Trump's attorney. And here's what it says. Here's what, and it's Epstein forwarding this to Ghislaine Maxwell. From Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine, and Epstein's lawyer forwarded this to Epstein. Epstein then forwarded it to Ghislaine Maxwell, and in it, Trump's own attorney sets the record straight on whether Epstein was ever expelled from Mar-a-Lago. He admits no. Epstein was not a member, may have been a guest, never asked to leave, and then Mar-a-Lago's manager, Bernd Lamke, confirmed that Epstein was never asked to leave, and obviously this contradicts Donald Trump's denials. Now, I'll just show you what Donald Trump's head of counterterrorism within the Director of National Intelligence's purview, Tulsi Gabbard's number 2, is this guy, Joe Kent, right? Joe Kent served, he had like 11 deployments, this guy. His wife was killed in a terrorist attack in Syria in 2019. Now, let's be clear. Joe Kent, right-wing extremist guy. But in MAGA world, this guy is like one of their heroes in MAGA world, whatever. And he resigned from the Trump regime yesterday, 2 days ago, because of the Iran war. And he goes, Iran never posed a threat. This guy he's one of the top people in the Trump regime. He's like one of their top officials. He basically was like running the threat assessments and counterterrorism for Tulsi Gabbard. That's who this guy was. So let me show you what he said. He'd said, first he was asked, who drove this decision to go into this war against Iran? This is Trump's top guy who resigned. Okay. He says Israel drove this decision, which we knew would set off a series of events, meaning Iranians would retaliate. So go back to what I said at the beginning. Don't forget what I said. Tom Barrack, Donald Trump's ambassador to Turkey, Donald Trump's envoy to Syria, says Epstein, Israel, that's where they got their power from. Epstein and Israel. We all knew that about Epstein. All the rich guys, we all knew that about him in the 80s and 90s. And Tom Barrack is a private equity guy, Colony Capital, billionaire guy, right? So that's what he said. He goes, Epstein was larger than life, and he was like Israel's guy. That's how we knew him. Okay, that's what he said. Now, fast forward, Donald Trump's dark past is coming out with the Epstein files. If you're wondering, I think the timing, okay, why right now? It's possible that Netanyahu gave Donald Trump, the distraction. They worked together and said, what can we do to distract from the Epstein files? Let's just go to war with Iran, a never-ending war. So everybody doesn't talk about the Epstein files, and they just talk about war with Iran as Donald Trump destroys the whole freaking country and the world right now. But here's what Joe Kent said. Israel drove this. This is Trump's guy. Here, play this clip.
We knew not that Iran was going to attack. He did not say that. Right. He said we knew that Israel was going to attack Iran, and in retaliation for those attacks by Israel against Iran, Iran might attack American forces. So the imminent threat that the Secretary of State is describing is not from Iran, it's from Israel.
Exactly. And I think this speaks to the broader issue who is in charge of our policy in the Middle East, who is in charge of when we decide to go to war or not. In this case, with what the secretary described, and later on the president, later on the Speaker of the House, and the way the events played out, the Israelis drove the decision to take this action, which we knew would set off a series of events, meaning the Iranians would retaliate. Now, I think there's a potential there where we could have done several different things. We could have simply said to the Israelis, no, you will not. And if you do, then we will take something away from you. I think that it's fine that we offer defense to Israel. But when we're providing the means for their defense, we get to dictate the terms of when they go on the offensive. Otherwise, they stand to lose that relationship. And the Israelis felt emboldened that no matter what they did, no matter what situation they put us in, that they could go ahead and take this action.
Now, it should also be noted that Joe Kent said on Tucker the other night that he believes that Charlie Kirk was lobbying Trump against the Iran war before Charlie Kirk was killed. And again, this is the top guy in the Trump administration who just resigned, who deals with intelligence. Here, play this clip.
And then, Charlie Kirk is killed publicly in a very horrific way. And we're not really even allowed to look into that at all. And Charlie Kirk was one of President Trump's closest advisors. And he also advocated heavily against a war with Iran. He was in the Oval Office in the lead up to the 12-day war. I wasn't particularly close with Charlie. He was very gracious to me when I was running for Congress, very, very supportive. So we knew each other. And the last time I saw Charlie Kirk on this earth was in June in the West Wing, in the stairway. And I said hi to him, and he looked me in the eye, and he said very loudly, and it's a small, you've been in the West Wing, it's small, it's a tight space. And he said, Joe, stop us from getting into a war with Iran. Very loudly.
He was single-minded.
And he walked off, and he went, I believe, into the Oval. So when one of President Trump's closest advisors, who is vocally advocating for us to not go to war with Iran and for us to rethink at least our relationship with the Israelis, and then he's suddenly publicly assassinated.
And then he was asked by Tucker, was Iran about to get a nuke? Was that something that you assessed in the Trump regime? Was Iran about to get a nuke? Listen to what he says here. Play this clip.
Was Iran on the verge of getting a nuclear weapon?
No, they weren't, 3 weeks ago when this started, and they weren't in June either. I mean, the Iranians have had a religious ruling, a fatwa, against actually developing a nuclear weapon since 2004. That's been in place since 2004. That's available in the public sphere. But then also we had no intelligence to indicate that fatwa was being disobeyed or it was on the cusp of being lifted. The Iranian strategy, it's actually pretty pragmatic. The Iranians are obviously aware of what's taking place in their region. And their strategy was to not completely abandon their nuclear program, because they saw what happened to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya when he said, hey, I've got no more nukes. I'll do what you say. I'll give up my nukes.
And we gave him the Nobel Peace Prize?
Yeah, we regime changed him, and he was executed by his own people in the most horrific way.
Oh, sodomized by a bayonet. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I think one of the important things as well to discuss is that because Donald Trump is so compromised by the Epstein files, and his friendship with Epstein and his dark past and all the other stuff that's out there about Trump and Epstein. And that's, I believe, still being hidden in the files, although what's in the files is grotesque. Iran is using that as a rallying call for its people against America. They're saying, look at the Epstein class. Look, do you want to have people who cover up child sex trafficking and Epstein's friends to be leading this? Is that what you want? So it's being used to actually harm our troops. So we caught up with AOC. Pablo Manriquez, who works at the MeidasTouch Network, was able to ask AOC a few questions about that. Here are the questions that were asked to AOC. Let's play it.
On Iran, do you feel that Trump being compromised as part of the Epstein files is putting our troops at risk abroad? A lot of our adversaries are using the Epstein files as sort of to create the narrative around the war.
Yeah, I think there was a story recently, if I'm not mistaken, about how they believed that the files themselves were compromised by a foreign actor. And anytime you have compromising information that is in the hands of a foreign actor, you have the possibility of manipulation, extortion of public officials. And that is extremely dangerous. And the whole point of having that is to force public officials to make decisions that are not always in the best interest of the United States so that they can kind of escape blackmail. We need to know more about the details of the situation, but ultimately we have seen U.S. service members lose their lives in addition to many innocent Iranians. And
do you think the Epstein? Sorry.
And we don't know, and there hasn't been justification as to why.
Do you think that the Epstein files could make Trump a target for blackmail then?
We don't know what's been compromised and what hasn't. Pam Bondi needs to release the other 3 million files. We have to remember that Attorney General Bondi is still illegally withholding it. She's in violation of the law. And from what from what folks have seen in the Epstein files, Trump is absolutely implicated. And that's just from what's been mentioned. That doesn't even include what's been hidden. And so if there's a foreign actor out there that has more access to the Epstein files than the United States Congress, then we do not know who is compromised, the extent to which they are compromised, and the extent to which blackmail could play a role. But I suspect the odds of that could be quite high.
Here was the question that we were able to ask Democratic Congressmember Sue Ramani, and play this clip.
So, Congressman, do you think that Trump being in the Epstein files is compromising our troops? Because, obviously our adversaries are using that to sort of cast a narrative about why we're in Iran.
Yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing for our country, and they're using it against us. The fact that he's been covering this up and been even named himself at different times in the files. So it's going to continue to be a problem for us.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman.
And here's what we were able to ask Democratic Congressmember Maxwell Frost. Play this clip.
So, Congressman, are you concerned that Trump being compromised by the Epstein files is having a negative impact on our troops' safety abroad? Our adversaries have been using, obviously, the Epstein files as a means.
100%, and I think I'm not sure it's the whole reason, but I definitely think part of the reason we're even in Iran has to do with the fact that he's looking for every single thing he can do to shift away attention from the fact that he's not only is he in the Epstein files, but he's in it a lot.
Right.
And he had a very close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and he's engaged in one of the greatest cover-ups we've ever seen from a U.S. president. So that's why we successfully subpoenaed Pam Bondi, and that's why we're going to continue to investigate this.
And now, folks, we're learning that Joe Kent, again, one of Trump's top intelligence guys, he's now under a potential criminal investigation by the Trump regime. CBS, which is state regime media, now like Fox, is reporting that the FBI is investigating former National Counterterrorism Center Director Joe Kent in connection with alleged leaks of classified information. With the investigation, they claim it started prior to his resignation. So now the Trump regime is going to go after Kent. So just put it all together. Just, ask questions. You have a First Amendment right to ask questions and to share opinions, which is what we're doing here in this video. I'm also layering on it receipts. You tell me what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers, and thanks for watching.
The truth is more important than ever. Check out our new Truth Over Lies collection at store.MeidasTouch.com. All 100% USA union made.